The sun hung low over Bright Ridge Air Force Base, throwing long golden streaks across the tarmac as families, retirees, and new recruits wandered between static displays. Children pointed excitedly at the F-22 Raptor parked at center stage, sleek, silent, and dominating the lineup like a predator resting between hunts. Its canopy glimmered, reflecting the curious faces gathered around it. Near the left wing stood a woman in worn mechanic overalls, her sleeves rolled, hands resting casually in her pockets. She looked like any other ground technician, grease marks on her collar, boots dusty from the morning's inspections. A few younger pilots noticed her, smirking as they approached. "Ma'am," one of them said with theatrical politeness, "careful not to scratch the paint. This bird is allergic to wrenches." His friend snickered. Visitors nearby chuckled, assuming it was light-hearted banter. The woman didn't react. She simply tilted her head, studying a sensor panel near the intake as if the joke hadn't even registered. Another pilot chimed in, "You know, the F-22 isn't like the generators you usually fix. She actually listens." "Yeah," a third added, "but only to pilots." The crowd laughed again, not cruelly but with that awkward, misguided humor people fall back on when they don't know better. She remained still, unfazed. For a moment, she rested her palm on the aircraft's skin, closing her eyes as if feeling for vibrations no one else could sense. Her lips moved slightly, whispering something, not quite words, more like code fragments, patterns, or rehearsed sequences. Nobody noticed, but the aircraft's nose sensor flickered for a split second. A nearby crew chief glanced over, brow furrowing. Something about her posture, the way she examined the jet silently, with a familiarity deeper than routine maintenance, didn't match the picture the pilots had painted. She stepped back, circling the Raptor with measured precision, tapping the fuselage at spots only someone who knew its anatomy intimately would check. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, almost nostalgic. The pilots watched her, confused at her calmness, expecting annoyance, a comeback, anything. But the woman simply kept studying the aircraft, eyes sharp, focused, and oddly confident. As if the F-22 wasn't just a machine on display, but an old friend she hadn't seen in years. The young pilots exchanged mischievous glances, the kind that came from equal parts arrogance and boredom. One of them, the ringleader, nudged his friend. "Watch this. If she wants to act like she knows jets, let's give her a little surprise." He walked toward the Raptor's maintenance console, swiping his badge with a flourish. The access panel beeped. A few taps on the touchscreen, a muffled snicker, and he triggered a harmless internal alarm, a low-level systems check that would flash a warning on the cockpit display. To him it was just a prank. To her, it was a very specific code sequence. The warning blinked inside the cockpit, AUX sys diag, 8H required. The pilots stifled laughter as the crowd noticed the light. "Oops," one said loudly, "looks like someone forgot to secure her tools." More chuckles from the onlookers. But the woman didn't flinch. She slowly lifted her eyes toward the cockpit display, watching the reflection of the blinking diagnostic light on the canopy. Her expression didn't show worry, only recognition. Almost like she'd been expecting it. Other technicians nearby grew uneasy. The crew chief whispered under his breath, "That's not a standard check. Who authorized that?" The woman quietly stepped closer to the aircraft, resting 2 fingers on a small access port just below the canopy line. Her touch was gentle, precise. She traced the outline of the panel, not like a mechanic checking for damage but like someone recalling an old memory. Meanwhile, the ringleader pilot kept whispering to his friends, "Relax. It's just a maintenance alert. She won't even know what it means." But the woman's subtle action said otherwise. Her gaze followed the blinking reflection, then swept toward the jet sensor suite, the airflow vanes, the avionics access vents. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. The older techs noticed it first, the way she stood, the way she observed. Like someone who had once sat inside the cockpit, not worked beneath it. The pilots kept pushing the joke, unaware of the thin line they were crossing. One leaned toward her, mocking gently, "Want help? I can explain what that light means. It's pilot stuff." She finally looked at him, calm, steady, unbothered. "No," she said softly. "I know exactly what it means." The words landed heavier than the pilots expected. Not a threat, not sarcasm, but certainty. A quiet certainty that made the nearby crew chief glance at the Raptor again, uneasy. Something wasn't adding up. For a moment, the blinking cockpit light and the murmuring crowd faded away. Her eyes, steady, distant, seemed to look straight through the Raptor and into a different time. Flashback, 15 years earlier. The desert sky trembled from the heat as an early model F-22 prototype roared down the runway. Inside the cockpit, a younger version of the same woman tightened her grip on the throttle. Sweat traced down her brow, but her voice was calm and controlled. Raptor 1, initiating voice link protocol, now. The aircraft responded with a soft chime, primitive compared to modern systems but revolutionary for its era. She was one of the few pilots trusted to test it. Fewer still had earned the reputation she carried. The call sign on her helmet read, Falcon Whisper. She'd earned it during a training mission. Her jet had lost half its avionics mid-flight, smoke filling the cockpit. Instead of ejecting, she spoke emergency override commands into the failing voice recognition mic, and the aircraft obeyed. She guided it home using nothing but instinct, voice, and nerves of steel. That day became legend in the test pilot community. But not all missions were triumphs. In another memory, a sandstorm swallowed the sky during a high-risk operation overseas. Visibility was nearly zero. A pair of rookie pilots lost formation and drifted dangerously close to enemy-controlled airspace. She heard the panic in their voices over the radio. Falcon Whisper, we're blind. We're losing position. Her voice was steady, unwavering. Follow my tone. I'll lead you out. She reduced her words to short-coded chants, specific rhythmic vocal pulses the F-22's early sensors could track. The jets synced to her signal like migrating birds following a guide. Minutes later, they broke free of the storm and into clear sky. The rookies never forgot who saved them. Over time, though, injuries classified missions and political. The diagnostic warning in the cockpit pulsed faster now, shifting from a harmless yellow to a deeper, more insistent amber. The pilots' laughter faded as they noticed the change. Oh, Davis, one of them muttered, did you set it to that mode? Davis frowned. No. I just triggered a basic maintenance alert. That's not supposed to escalate. But it had. The screen inside the cockpit switched to a restricted interface, one normally locked behind higher clearance. Voice link legacy mode, standby. Authorization required. The woman's gaze sharpened. She stepped forward, placing herself between the pilots and the aircraft, her hand resting on the panel beneath the canopy. Her fingers hovered over a barely visible seam in the metal, a hidden access point most modern pilots didn't even know existed. The crew chief's eyes widened. How does she know where that is? Before anyone could react, the Raptor emitted a soft electronic trill, low, rising, almost like a machine taking a cautious breath. A murmur spread through the crowd. Parents pulled their children closer. Tech crews exchanged wary looks. Something was happening. The pilot stiffened. Okay, what did you just do? Davis demanded. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned in, speaking 5 quiet words into the small intake microphone just below the panel. Raptor, initiate whisper protocol. The effect was immediate. The aircraft's external lights flickered once, then stabilized, glowing in a pattern none of the current generation pilots recognized. Control surfaces along the wings twitched, moving with short, precise corrections as if the jet were waking from a long sleep. The crowd gasped. The pilot stumbled back. What the hell is whisper protocol? One whispered. The woman didn't look at them. Her focus stayed locked on the F-22, her tone calm, steady, commanding. Standby mode. Level 3. Verify biometric imprint. The aircraft responded with another tone, deeper, almost respectful. A nearby lieutenant shook his head slowly. That's impossible. Those commands were discontinued years ago. But the jet didn't care about regulations or timelines. It recognized her. And it obeyed. The pilot's earlier confidence dissolved into panic. Shut it down, Davis hissed. Shut it down before the commander sees. Too late. The whine of a command vehicle echoed across the tarmac, blue lights flashing as it sped toward them. Soldiers moved aside. Families stared. The prank was over. Now it was something else entirely. The command vehicle braked hard beside the F-22, its lights strobing across the stunned crowd. The door swung open before the engine even fully stopped. Out stepped Colonel Ramsey, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and notorious for detecting trouble from a mile away. He scanned the scene quickly. The blinking Raptor. The pale, nervous young pilots. The woman standing calmly beside the aircraft. Too calmly. Who authorized this system activation? Ramsey barked. No one answered. Davis swallowed hard. Sir, we were just. Just what? Ramsey snapped. Interfering with a 5th-generation fighter you're not certified to operate? Triggering a legacy protocol you shouldn't even know exists. The pilots froze, unable to explain how a simple prank had turned into a classified systems event. Ramsey's attention shifted to her. She hadn't moved since he arrived, still watching the Raptor, still perfectly composed, like someone waiting for unfinished business to resume. The colonel's sharp eyes narrowed as recognition slowly crept across his face. "It can't be," he murmured. He took a step closer. Then another. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I need your name." She met his gaze with calm certainty, no hesitation. "Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Hayes. Retired." The effect was electric. Gasps fired through the crowd. A few technicians straightened instinctively. Davis nearly dropped his badge. Even Ramsey stiffened. "Is Falcon Whisper Hayes?" She nodded once. The pilots' faces drained of color as the reality hit them. The woman they'd mocked, ignored, and pranked was not a mechanic. She was the pilot. The one whispered about in training halls. The one who'd tested systems no one else dared touch. The one whose classified missions still sat buried behind redacted briefings. Ramsey exhaled slowly. "You're the only surviving test pilot cleared for Whisper protocol. That mode shouldn't even be accessible on a public demo aircraft." "That's why it responded," she said softly. "It still recognizes my imprint." Silence rippled across the tarmac. The commander turned sharply to the young pilots. "You activated a diagnostic sequence that escalated into a classified protocol, and she prevented it from triggering a lockdown. If she hadn't been here," he left the rest unsaid. Davis opened his mouth, but no words formed. Ramsey looked back at her with something between respect and reverence. "Ma'am, if you're willing, I'd like you to finish what the aircraft started." She finally stepped forward, placing her hand on the Raptor. "Stand down protocol," she commanded softly. The jet responded instantly, lights dimming, surfaces relaxing, engines settling into complete stillness. A legend didn't need volume. Just presence. The last diagnostic light fading on the Raptor left the tarmac strangely quiet, as if the entire base were holding its breath. Colonel Ramsey stepped aside, giving Sarah a moment to collect herself, but she didn't need one. Her posture remained steady, her gaze still calm. She looked as if she belonged there, because she did. The crowd pressed closer. The young pilots remained frozen, unsure whether to apologize, salute, or simply disappear. Ramsey cleared his throat, projecting his voice for everyone within earshot. "Most of you may not recognize her by sight, but every pilot on this base owes something to Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Hayes." A ripple of murmurs spread through the visitors. She was one of the first test pilots trusted with the adaptive response interface, the voice command system the F-22 originally experimented with. Whisper Protocol was her project, her battlefield, and her risk. He glanced at the pilots who had teased her. "You boys think these aircraft respond to you because you look the part? Because you wear a flight suit? No. This jet responded to her because she earned its respect. With sweat, with danger, with missions you'll read about only when you're old and retired." Sarah didn't speak, but her expression softened with a quiet humility that only deepened the impact of Ramsey's words. He continued, "She flew combat trials blind through sandstorms. She brought home prototypes after system failures that would have scared most pilots into ejecting. She saved wingmen by guiding them through zero visibility conditions. Some of the advancements you enjoy in our aircraft today exist because she survived what others didn't." The rookies weren't just embarrassed now, they were ashamed, visibly shrinking under the weight of truth. Sarah finally broke her silence. "Experience doesn't need an audience," she said softly. "And respect isn't based on rank or age. It's based on understanding what others have walked through to get where they are." Her eyes swept across the pilots, not angry, not disappointed, but firm. "You judged me by grease on my sleeves. But every pilot starts somewhere on the ground. If you forget that, you forget the heart of this profession." The pilots nodded slowly, unable to look her in the eye. One of them, Davis, finally forced out a trembling apology. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. We didn't know." "That's the point," Sarah replied gently. "You never know who paved the runway you're standing on." The words sank deep, settling over the tarmac like a lesson no training manual could ever teach. Colonel Ramsey stepped closer to her and saluted, a gesture filled with genuine respect. "Welcome home, Falcon Whisper." For the first time that day she smiled, not large but sincere. A quiet hero seen again. The sun had dipped lower now, washing the base in a soft orange haze as the crowd slowly dispersed. Conversations buzzed everywhere, not about the flight demos, not about the static displays, but about her. The woman in mechanic overalls who had brought a silent raptor to life with nothing more than her voice. Sarah stepped away from the aircraft, brushing a faint smear of dust from her sleeve. No fanfare. No speeches. Just her steady, unhurried walk across the tarmac, the walk of someone who never needed recognition to validate her worth. Colonel Ramsey called after her, "We'd like you to stay for the evening ceremony." She shook her head lightly. "This isn't my spotlight, Colonel. It's the new generation's." "But you are the story," he argued gently. "Only because time forgets what service remembers," she replied with a faint smile. "Let them write the next chapter." And with that, she continued toward the edge of the event grounds. No attention. No applause following her. Just the soft crunch of her boots on concrete and a few hushed salutes from older veterans who suddenly recognized her. Behind her, a small group of technicians and pilots gathered around the F-22, still processing what they'd witnessed. Davis stood closest, staring at the jet as if seeing it for the first time, not as a machine but as a responsibility. The crew chief approached him. "Son, that wasn't a mistake. That was a lesson." Davis exhaled slowly. "Yeah, a big one." Later that evening, as the crowds thinned, base personnel unveiled a new bronze plaque mounted near the nose wheel of the display aircraft. Read, "In honor of LT Call, Sarah Falcon Whisper Hayes. Test pilot, pioneer, guardian of the Raptor program. For her voice, her valor, and the sky she never claimed but always protected." Young airmen gathered around it, snapping photos, whispering the story as if passing down a legend newly discovered. The tale spread fast, not exaggerated, not dramatized, simply told with awe. And somewhere outside the base gates, walking alone beneath the fading light, Sarah Hayes smiled to herself. Not because people finally remembered, but because the aircraft had. Ending CTW. Like, share, and subscribe for more aviation legend stories.